All right, everybody. If y'all want to come forward, we'll go ahead and get a head start on this.
Also, everything's recording right here. This one.
Yeah, I was about to pull it up over there. Hey, Gabe, come here. It's not letting me open Chrome.
Oh, yeah.
Keeps going OBS.
Oh.
It's weird. All right, cool.
Oh, well, we gotta drag that.
Yeah. All right, so who here has used Marvelous before? 1, 2, cool. So for anybody who doesn't know, it's a pretty simple software to use. It's just cloth simulation, that's all it is. Whether you're making clothes or whether you're trying to animate clothes, same thing. You're just making patterns, putting them around a person, and then sewing it together. It's very, very simple. The hard part is when you want to do something that's moderately complex, and then it gets kind of out of hand when you're trying to figure out how the patterns lay out, how do I sim it, where do I pull it, the different fabric settings, how thick should it be, how firm should it be. But I'll try and walk you through some of that. So very basically, if you haven't looked at it before, you have your 3D viewport on this side, and then your 2D on that side. What you'll do is you'll make your patterns over here, and then you'll bring it, it'll automatically populate on the 3D side, and then you'll just sim it together. So this is an example of what it would look like, just so you get the physical versus the digital version. You have your different sewing patterns, or segments if you want to call it that, and you're making those digitally and then you're sewing them together. So think about if you're actually wearing a t-shirt, you have your front part, you have your sleeve, and then you have your back part, and you're just putting those together. So think literally about where the seams are, where the threads are. And then this is an example of what it looks like. You have your patterns over on this side, and then you just sew them together. It's very simple. And then if you wanted to do animation, you usually want to do your simulations for your clothes in an A pose or T pose, and then you would bring in your animation with the clothes finished, and then it would walk through the simulation for you. So that's good if you want to do animation, or let's say you pose your character in a certain position, and then you want to, for a final render, pose them in a different position. It'll send those clothes down to that pose, and you can just export the clothes out at the frame that you want it at. So I'll go ahead and give y'all a demo. I'm going to do something very basic just to get you through the basics. And if there's anything else y'all want to see, just let me know and I can walk you through it. Did all that make sense for y'all? I feel like I went through it pretty quick, but it's not a hard program to get into. All right, so when you start up, it usually will be empty, and then you can either get an avatar from over here or import your own. When you do import, you have to there's a certain setting you have to click to make sure it imports correctly. So if you do an FBX, do that. Don't have a body prepared. Anyhow, I didn't have a mesh ready, but when you import in, just make sure you click auto scale. Or if you have a specific setting like millimeters, inches, whatever, do that and say align the bottom, because sometimes if it's too big or too small, it'll mess up the simulation. So usually I just do auto scale, align the bottom, and it'll be fine that way. So just make like a basic t-shirt. When you're making your patterns, you don't go like really out of your way to get all of it nice and perfect and get all the curves in it. Start rather blocky, and then from there you can go in and dial it in. So if I was to make a t-shirt, press S, and that brings up square. You would draw it out like this, and all the different drawing settings are right here if you want to click through it. I'm going to use hotkeys, but I'll usually tell you what it is as I'm going through it. So that'll give you half a t-shirt, and then press A so you can select it, and then right click, and you're going to select symmetric pattern with sewing. And what this will do is it'll put your t-shirt on this side, but now any edits I do on this one will affect the one on the other side. So if I was to press V so I can select a vertice, I can move that around and it will affect this one over here. So Control Z to undo that. I'm just gonna move these a little bit on this side so I can see what they look like. If I move this over here, it doesn't affect this. But anytime I draw something out on this side over here on the 2D, it'll always populate wherever it is on the 3D. So if I was to come over here and draw something out, it's going to come out way over here, which isn't where you want it. So always make sure you're drawing where you want it at on the character model. Hey KJ. So we have our two sides right here. I'm going to bring this one back in so you know what it looks like. What I would do is press A, which allows you to select, drag select over all that, Control C, Control V, and this will be the back of your t-shirt. Now, like I said, when you draw it out over here, it will do it accurately in the 3D side. So click on it, this will give you your gizmo. Sometimes it acts funny. If it doesn't show up, just keep clicking on the pattern and eventually it will show up. So you have it over here, rotate it like this, and also if you press shift, it will snap. Or it won't actually. It'll snap on 90 degrees, I think. Yeah. So move these to the back, and then as you, oh, I got it right actually, sorry. Sometimes you have to flip normals, so if I wanted to have this be the white face, you would right click on it and flip normal. Sometimes it goes right and you don't have to flip it, and then other times you do. It's kind of finicky at times. So we have this laid out, and like I said, it's pretty basic. It's just a rectangle, but now what you would do is you would come through and you would make out the pattern for the neck, and then as well as the sleeve is on the sides. So if you press X, this will allow you to put in a vertex or a segment, depending on how you want to think about it. And it should have, yeah. And then V will let you click a vertex and move it down. And as you can see, that creates the shape for the neck hole. Now, I would just be safe and just make it a little bit bigger, and then you can dial it in later. So we have that, and then we're also going to do it to the back side as well, because there is a little bit of a curve to the back of a t-shirt. So on the back side, X, and then V, move that vertex down, and then you have that as well. So now that we have our pattern laid out, and it's kind of basic, and put another vertex, but then we're going to make the sewing patterns as well. So we're going to make the lines that say connect the front to the back for the shoulder, and then as well for the waist and side. So let me add in another one under the sleeve, which is on this side. Remember, we're doing it on the front and the back. Now, N will bring up the sewing tool, but that's this one right here. Depending on how you're sewing, and I'll show you in a minute, you'll usually use N. If you're just sewing one segment to another, it's usually N. But if you're sewing, it'll be easier to show you later, but if you're sewing maybe one segment to multiple segments, then you have to use a different tool for that. And I can show you an example. So N will bring up the sewing tool. You can do it on the 2D side. You can say here to here. But usually I do it on the 3D side. That way I can actually make sure, okay, it is lining up the way it's supposed to. So if I press N, start here, and then go here. Now you see how those lines are straight? That means the segment lines are gonna sim properly. If they weren't straight and it looked like this, for example, that means when I sim it, it'll kind of crosswire, and you don't want that. And sometimes it can get very tedious to get those sewing lines correct, but once you get used to, okay, how does this line up properly, you will get pretty used to, you can do it rather quickly. So just N, sew that together, and then N here, and here, and then you're also going to have to sew the middle together. Now if you want to sim it, just press spacebar, and that didn't work. Q, if you have tool selected on this side, if you just press Q, it'll go back to just like a regular select. So I'm going to take all these and move them up. So this way when it sims, it should sim a little bit better. And you can also take them and just move them closer together. Sometimes if it's too far away when it goes to sim, it'll sim too late and then it'll drop down like y'all saw. Alright, so that's a pretty basic t-shirt. Now when you're going to come through and add the arc for it, you can press C, and if it's a straight line, it'll allow you to bend it. Or you can also press V, and it'll kind of add like a vertex in there. It's the same function essentially, just depending on what you want to do. So I'll just press C. That'll allow me to just pull that down a little bit and you get a curve. And then I'll do that on the back as well. Now this is too wide, so I'm going to press V, select a vertex, drag it over, drag this one over as well, pull that up. When you're in simulation mode, as you press space, you enter into it, then you can kind of drag this around. As soon as you exit it by pressing spacebar again, it goes away, and now you can just select stuff. So this is too big for a t-shirt, for a neck hole. Just going to take this vertex, V, and then drag it up a little bit. If you hold down Shift, it'll make these axis lines and it'll go along that axis. Cool. Now this is too wide. The seams usually will come right diagonally at the shoulder. So you can just take this, V, drag select both of these, just pull them in a little bit. And then I would also take this one and pull it in. Also, if y'all need patterns for something you're making, if you go on Pinterest or you can do it on Google, just say like I'm making like this type of t-shirt pattern, and it'll bring up the patterns for you. You can just import those or look at them on PureRef and just draw them out manually. Alright, so now for the sleeves, drag those over, press S again, and you're going to draw out a square for the pattern. I would make the sleeves a little bit big as far as not the length, but the height of it. And then we're going to click on it. That'll bring up the gizmo. And we're just going to kind of drag this in approximately to where it'll be. You want a little bit above the body, that way you have that distance for it to sim. Alright, so now this is an example where you can't just sew one line straight to another, because what you'll have right here is you have this one edge, and then you have one edge here, and a second edge here. So you're sewing from one edge to two. I did this earlier, and sometimes it's tricky, so I probably forgot it, but you're going to go to free segment sewing, or sorry, M&N segment sewing. This is where it tends to get tricky. So you're going to select this one first. Actually, let me figure out where these are. So I'm going to bring these two together. This is the back, and then this is the front. When you're doing this, sometimes it helps to just pull those patterns together temporarily and then see, okay, these are where I'm sewing the lines to. Am I going too fast for y'all? Okay. So M&N, you're going to create your M. This is saying this is the first section where I want the segment to be. You create M, press Enter, and then you're going to have to select your N. I'm trying to remember how I did this. You would start, this is the vertex right here, so I'm going to go along this edge and then drag around this edge right here. So you're going to start here, go up to here, and then down to here. Once you have that done, press Enter, and I hope this works. It did. Did that make sense to y'all? Because sometimes that can be a little tricky. Cool. Now as you can see, the sleeve is a little loose, and one thing you can do, if you have this section right here the way you want and you don't want it to move, if you click on these pieces and press Control K, it'll freeze it and it'll turn it blue. So that's how you know it's frozen. So I can take these pieces and move them all I want to, but this will never move. So I'm going to unfreeze these, select them again, press Control K, that'll unfreeze it. Now you want to put a little bit of a bow on your sleeve. probably go ahead and freeze these. And then once again, we're going to sew the bottom of the sleeve together. So in, top and bottom, select that. Sometimes it'll do this where it'll cross wire into the body, and you can usually pull it out. Yeah. And then it happens on the back. Alright, Shift A should hide the body, and you can drag it out a little bit easier, or not. Alright, I'm going to extend this down, and hopefully that should open that up a little bit. Cool. So made it a little bit longer, and then it'll seam together. Now let's say you have a sleeve and you want it to bow up on a certain area. If you want on this side of the sleeve or on the other side, all you have to do is come in here and you would basically almost make like a mushroom for the sleeve. So press X, add in a vertice here, and add a vertice in down here for the load. And then another one here as well. Now you would want these to be smooth, but I'm doing this to test it out first. I had a document for this and how to do this, and I don't have it on me. Also, if y'all are ever making a pattern or doing any kind of a cloth and you don't know what to do, Marvelous Designer has a Discord. And if you go through and say, this is my reference, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I've done, there's a girl on there called Rosemary. She's one of the moderators. She's really good at giving you the explanation and the answer, and then also some of the documentation that they have on their website specifically for what you're trying to do. Alright, so let's say you don't want the sleeve to move anymore. So I think that's probably what's causing me the issue right now. You come over here to pin lasso, and you can select these vertices. And if they're selected red, actually let me do it on this side. If they're selected red, then they won't move. Everything else will move but those right there. So having an issue with that, and then as well, I don't think the density of the mesh is helping very much. So down here you have what's called a particle distance. It's set to 20 by default. If you set this to 10 or 5, it'll increase the quality. So you can see those wrinkles got a lot smoother. So V, drag select all these. I think Z, and then select the yellow. Move that in a little bit. I just did this before y'all came up, and I don't remember how I did it. Anyhow, there is a way to make the sleeve puff out. That's gonna bother me. Okay, so I'm gonna unpin this and just turn this into a long sleeve for y'all. Press A, click these, move them out of the way. Z, select this, drag it out. C, see how this is bowing? If you press C, it'll allow you to fix that and just drag it back out. So if you're running into an issue where it just keeps doing this, just press B. You can select these two right here and press delete, and it'll delete that sewing line. And what that'll do is it'll allow this to just sim open. Move the sleeves where you need them, if it'll let me. And then press N again, and then sim those together. You have a t-shirt. Now you can see this is kind of bowing down right here. If on the seams you have that bow, instead of making it wider, sometimes it'll just create like a hanging in the fabric, which isn't what you want. So just press V, select these, delete them, and that'll sim it out like that. Now let's say this is a loose fabric and you want something tighter. You come over here to your fabric, click on this, and then come down to where this little drop down is right here, and you have all these different fabric settings. So you just got to go through them depending on what you're making and just figure out, okay, which one of these will give me the result I want. If you want something that's tighter, there's this one here, silk knit jersey. It's a little bit more of a finer fabric, but as you can see, it pulls more to the body. And for me, I know this is a very simple shirt, but I would rather do this and have to sculpt all the wrinkles because I hate doing that. So if you're making something simple, this is a really good way to do it. If you're doing something complex, it's a lot easier to do it this way than have to do it in ZBrush. So yeah, I know that's very basic. Is there anything y'all would like to see? KJ had her hand first, sorry. Getting it to puff out? Oh, like this? Okay, I'll come back to that. What do you want?
Well, I was wondering if there was a way to add a seam on the polygon so you could
like cut things out?
Because you connect them on the sides, right?
Yeah.
Is there a way to do it like in the center of it?
You mean like if I had this right here and I wanted to cut this in half? Kind of?
If you wanted to like sew something to the center of it.
Yeah. So what you would do is come up here, it's G but internal line. Actually X. This will snap to the middle. So create a vertice right there. G, internal line. Should connect. Yeah, so this right here that you're seeing, this is a line I just created. So then I could just come through, do that, and actually move this up. So Q, select that, drag it up, rotate it. It always stays in world transform. Usually like if you rotate something in other programs, the gizmo will move with it. It doesn't do that marvelous. So it is kind of tricky to move stuff around. So N, and this is a silly example, but is this what you meant? So just drag this on here, like that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so for the sleeve that you asked about, try to remember how to do it. I think you have to set a fold angle. And let me try that real quick. So I'm going to shorten this down so that it's actually tighter to the arm. So Z, it'll let you select these. Move it up. And then I'm going to press A and just select this whole thing and just shrink it down that way. And that'll tighten it right here. Alright, so this is something that you should probably know. If you select any edge, right click on it, and then do offset internal line. You see this little line right here? As you increase the distance, it'll increase that line. There's a lot of different uses for this, but one thing you can do is say reverse direction. Okay, never mind. Right click, internal line, let it stay here. And what this will do, I selected the wrong ones. Let's see. Okay, so it'll only give me that line right there. And what you'll do is you'll right click on this line and then say cut and sew. And it'll make these two different pieces, but it already created those sewing lines for you. So if I was to press space, it's already sewn those together. Now to get this to fold, I'm gonna delete these lines. KJ, you asked me something I never do. Okay, I'll answer that after I'm done. I'll have to look into it because I know there's an easy way to do it. But it's one of these settings that you come in and you just say fold angle for this line right here, and then the fold angle for that. And I think it's you can go to 0 to 360, and you just fold it up, and it'll automatically or always keep that crease on there. It might be in the pleat settings, but once we're done, I'll look into it because I know there's a video that's like 2 minutes long that shows how to do it. So, anything else y'all want to see? Does anybody have to do pleats? I don't see any. KJ?
How would I automatic call it?
Do it. I got messed up. Okay, when I get this fixed, I'll make a call here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and show you how to do this because this might help fix it. If you want to take one pattern and mirror it straight to the other with the same sewing lines to the corresponding segments, just right click on it and then I know there's a hotkey for it. I usually don't do it this way. Say mirror pace, I think is what it is. Okay, it's Control D. You press Control Z or Control D, and it'll bring it over. And as you can see, it made those sewing lines, which didn't fix that. Made it worse. Okay, so if you wanted to make a collar, it's almost the same thing as making a sleeve, just around the neck. You would press S, and then, press S here, that way it populates where it should go. Just drag it up here, and then if you press Shift F, it'll bring up what's called arrangement points. So when you bring in a mesh, it'll automatically generate these, and it just says, here are the arms, here are the legs, here's the neck, and you can click on these and it will take a shape and it'll wrap it around that, so you don't have to manually try and do it. So you just click on this one right here and it would wrap around the back of the neck. Now this is a little short, so press A and then just scale this a little bit and then click on that again. Q, click on that, and it'll kind of put it in that area. Now one thing we'll have to do is we'll have to put a vertex. I'm trying to think how that'll work. So you won't have to do that. Okay. So this is gonna be kind of tricky to sew. We're gonna have to do the M and N segment sewing again. So you have to select your M and then your N. But what we're gonna do now is one segment, which is your M, to 1, 2, 3, 4 segments. So it's a little bit tricky. What I like to do is, so it'll start right here, because what you're gonna have is this edge will sew into this edge, and then it'll wrap around the collar, and then this last vertex right here will sew in right there. So I like to select these in order, so I know these patterns, one's for the chest and the back. I like to select them, that way I know, okay, this is the order that I need to sew them in. So have these, that'll be that one, back left, and then front right. So the way I'm going to sew it is this one right here, and then start at the bottom, go to the top to bottom, bottom to top, and then top to bottom. Does that make a little bit of sense? Cool. So you come up here, M&N segment sewing, going to, this should be the bottom, so just going to drag this will be my M, press enter, and then we're going to start sewing the N. So go to here, that's bottom to top, top to bottom, bottom to top, and then top to bottom. Press enter, and as you can see, press Shift A, it'll hide the avatar. It flipped it. So I got it backwards. What I'll have to do, instead of sewing from left to right on this, is I'll have to sew right to left. So Control Z, undo that, and then segment sewing, you're gonna go right to left. That's your M, press enter, and now we're gonna start the N. So bottom to top, top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, press enter, and as you can see, all the segments are populating correctly. So Shift A, bring him back, and then send that together. I know that's not the cleanest collar, but you get the idea of how it'll go together. And then what you would do is you would just come through. There's a couple of different ways to get the fold of the collar if you want it to fold down, or if you want it like a sports sweater, and that way it just kind of stays up all the time. One thing you can do is you can Control C, Control V on this, bring it down. Make sure there's no segment lines, so just press B, and if there's anything connecting, then you know you have your lines. And then just press N, connect those together, and then you would have to go through and set a fold angle on that, and that'll fold it down. But one other thing you can do, man, I wish I remember how to do fold angle. Press Z, select this edge right here, and then offset as internal line, and then try to get the middle point on this. And then you would just set the fold angle on this. So you would just select this edge. Oh, there it is. That's what I was trying to find earlier, the fold strength. So there might be a setting I have to click before this, but I'm going to set this to 360. Going to increase the particle distance to 10 once again, or actually it's decreasing the particle distance, but it increases the quality of the mesh. That didn't help. Fold strength. Okay, there's another setting, KJ, but I'll find that and tell you what it is. Alright, is there anything else?
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
So how do you go about making something that's not human, like a leather bag or whatnot?
That's kind of tricky. So what you'd want to do is bring in an object that has the general shape of what you want, and then you would, let's say you're doing a bag. Like if I was going to make this, I would bring in an object that's the shape of the book bag, and then I would just sew like this one right here. And you just make out the patterns and then wrap it around that way. It would be a little bit harder to actually wrap, because if you have a human, you have your arrangement points. So if you have a square, you just click on the arrangement point and it wraps it around it. When you're doing a bag, you kind of have to be really particular about put this here, put that there. The hard thing to do for that one is you have to make sure when you do the seams, you have to set the elasticity correct. Otherwise, you won't get that puckering that you get on a book bag or a leather bag or a purse. So yeah, just have a general shape what you want. I'll do that, and then I'll come in on ZBrush and then just sculpt that in, because I've never gotten good with making leather bags. I've seen people do them, but if any of you haven't looked, it's kind of hard to find good Marvelous tutorials. A lot of them, they'll have like full tutorials with no voiceovers. It's like a 40-minute video on this crazy dress and then no explanation for it. So, and that's usually from Marvelous. They'll put out official videos with nothing. So, anything else?
Is there any good tutorials that you recommend, like that actually do have voiceover dialogues?
Let me look. Okay, I assume everybody knows who Flip Normals is. Flip Normals, y'all know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay, they obviously have a great video on it. Let me look. It really depends on what you're making. I know some of Marvelous's most recent stuff, they've been doing a lot of voiceovers, like in the last year or so. And especially when you're on like specific things, like if you're saying, how do I make a car that'll fold twice or something like that? Then they'll have videos on like those small things, but on really long tutorials on how do I make a dress with pleats and do this, this, and this. They don't do full tutorials on that. Usually what you'll have is somebody doing their own videos showcasing that. I know there's one girl who's got really good videos, and there's another guy I like to watch. Okay. So this guy right here, his name is Fab Matt. His videos are really good. A lot of his stuff is kind of like Victorian Renaissance maybe, but it's good if you want to learn the basics, and not even just the basics, how to do good simulations. And if I have like for example, how do I do these kind of fraying patterns around the collars or things like that. And he has a Discord. If you go into his Discord and say, there's like nobody in the server, you just say, I'm having this issue, he responds very quickly, and if you want him to, he'll make a video on it. So it's definitely a resource I would say look into. He's got tremendous stuff. A lot of the questions I have, he's pretty good at answering. So between him and the Marvelous Discord, those are probably going to be your two best friends for cloth simulation. Thanks, KJ. Anything else?
Do you have Victoria dressed in
It's not happening.
what?
No.
How long would that take?
Probably a while. I haven't used Marvelous in probably 2 months. Yeah. The last project I used it on was the one on the loading screen earlier. So.
Would it be better to, like, for some stuff, could it be just like manually sculpt that, not be more efficient, or like it's more for like realistic simulation?
I don't like sculpting clothes. I find it easier just to sim it. The hard part is when you have to make like a specific thing. Sometimes it can be tricky to figure out like how to make that in Marvelous. But as long as you take advantage of your resources and just reach out to people, the Discords or going on YouTube, you can usually get a good idea of what you're trying to make. So.
So, like, I'm betting that some people use, like I use it in Blender, like you can already have a model, use a mask to select that geometry, you extract it, and like you can use like a solidified modifier, and that can like generate it, but that wouldn't necessarily generate like perfect particles.
Yeah.
Or like cloth effects on it. So it's just like I guess for more realistic, if you want to do like realistic simulation, Marvelous would be like the program to use.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's easier for getting good wrinkles. I don't like sculpting wrinkles, but it's good at making them accurate to where they should be. Sometimes when you're making wrinkles, you'll start sculpting a lot of them, and then you'll lose track of where they are, like where are the X's and the Y's and the Z's when you're making your wrinkles. And this is good because you don't have to worry about that. So
It's like realistic. You're not like guessing.
no, you're not guessing, no. And sometimes you just have to go back over and resculpt some things. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you export out, I don't know why it's like this, but it is. You have your seams, and you can see these seams in the viewport. When you export out, this is really buggy, but instead of having that in the geometry, it's in a normal map. So if you export this out and bring it into ZBrush, you have to resculpt that seam so it's actually visible in the program. So would y'all like to see me bring this into ZBrush so y'all can see the workflow of how to convert that? Cool. So what you're going to do is select all of these pieces and then go to 3D garment. Right now, if you were to look at the wireframe, it's all triangles. You know, when you bring it into ZBrush, you can have whatever you want. I prefer just go ahead and convert it to quads, and then ZBrush can better read it when it's zero meshing. So 3D garment. Maybe it's edit. Okay, edit context menu, then 3D garment, and then quadrangulate. Let that load. All right, so that's all quads now. You can go to File, Export, OBJ, FBX, whatever you want to do. I usually click Unweld, and I'll show you why in a minute. When you have it on Unweld, it'll bring it in as one object, but it'll be separate pieces, and you can auto group. And then weld in ZBrush, and then when you zero mesh, then you'll have your poly groups. So unweld, thin, I don't think I've ever used thick before. And then just turn off all these maps because you don't need them. You just need the geometry. Where's my proximity? And then exclude rig, that should exclude the person itself. Gabriel,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about this.
The UI looks a little familiar.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
By the way, just so I know, who here is in the beginner class? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm guessing everybody else has taken the intro class then? Sweet. And it brought in everything. Okay, so when you export, you also have to say select all avatars. Turn that off as well. Well, that's great. Alright, so I'm going to turn on double so I can see the sides. For you, when I do these, I have menus for it. So if it's confusing, just let me know. So press Shift F, and you can see it's all one polygroup. Press, okay, y'all don't do that, but auto groups. And you have your polygroups, then you're going to come down here to geometry, modify topology, and then weld points. Now to see if this is weld all the points together, just subdivide it one time and it didn't work. So increase the distance on that. There's still some missing. And that. Okay, I'm gonna have to pull this out a little bit. Yeah, you can kind of see where it's clipping through, so just got to go back through and look at it. Well, see ya. Alright, so I got these smoothed out. Select them all. File, export, FBX, test, and then select all avatars, turn that off, and then exclude rig. Alright, so double and then auto groups again. I might have told it to weld points on that. Export FBX. Okay, unweld, sorry. You have to do this every time. Alright, so double again so you can see the back sides. And then auto groups. You have all your groups on there. And then let's do weld points. And everything worked. I think so. Gonna smooth that out. Alright, so I'm just gonna subdivide this a couple times. Try to smooth that out. And now what you can do is control click here so you have that saved on your history. And then we're just going to do a zero mesh on this. Keep groups, and now what this will do is when it zero meshes, it'll maintain those lines that you need. And because this has a split seam right there, it will create that seam you need on the sleeve. And that's good because when you're texturing, you want to have your patterns follow the sleeves or follow the the pattern of the threads need to follow the pattern of the shirt. So it's important to have these lines. Otherwise, your patterns, like for your fabric, will be going all zigzag. So you just want to make sure everything is straight. Zero mesh it. Sorry, let me turn on symmetry when I do a zero mesh. Now the topology wasn't bad for this when I imported it, but if you're doing something more complex, you have more wrinkles and things like that, then you would want to do a zero mesh. That was weird. Okay, we're just going to ignore that. It's not good either. All right. Turn off symmetry. Alright, so we're going to subdivide this a couple times. That got all messy, but this is just for the sake of demonstration. Subdivide it, and then project history, and this will bring back those wrinkles. So that's just, it's very simple. Import it, weld your points, get your polygroups before you weld your points, and then subdivide a couple times, and then project your history with a new zero mesh topology. So, that makes sense for y'all? Cool. Is there anything else I'd like to see? Cool, I think that wraps it up. Gabe?
What?
I think that wraps it up.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
Alright. In that case, everybody, thank you for coming, and let's give Peter a hand.
It's not important.